Welcome to My Wife Left Me Reviews. Today we'll be talking about Dr. Sleep, the new Stephen King movie. Years following the events of The Shining, a now adult Dan Torrance must protect a young girl with similar powers from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. I'm joined on the panel by Sean.
Hello everyone.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you gaming?
Doing well. So this movie is directed by Mike Flanagan, which, if you didn't know, he also did other popular horror movies such as The Haunting on Hill House is probably one of his most popular things. Yeah, the Netflix show.
Right.
Gerald's Game, A Ouija Origin of Evil, which is actually pretty good if you didn't see it.
Yeah, I haven't
the first
seen
Ouija fucking sucked. Hush, which is a pretty good
I like Hush.
home invasion movie. Oculus, and a few others. So we'll do non-spoiler to start. So what are your initial thoughts about the movie?
I thought it was fucking great.
Yeah.
I saw it, I guess we both saw it, what was it?
It was Wednesday.
Yeah,
a
last
days
Wednesday.
ago.
Yeah. And it was just, from start to finish, the whole thing was just solid. I really didn't have many complaints, honestly.
Yeah, and for a movie that's 2.5 hours, it really,
the pacing was really good.
Yeah, the pacing was great. It kept my attention the whole way.
Same.
Very tense throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I definitely, before we get into spoilers, definitely recommend go see this movie.
Absolutely.
It's not doing all that well at the box office, which is
disheartening.
Disappointing, but they released it in fucking November. Why didn't they give it an October release?
True. Yeah.
And this movie blew fucking It Chapter 2 out of the water, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, It Chapter 2 I thought sucked. They should have just released this beginning of October.
Yeah, they definitely should have released this in the month because it would have been very good for that time.
Because apparently they had sequels planned as well.
Really?
And now with it doing not well, they're just going to be...
Well, that sucks.
We can talk a little bit about cinematography before we get into spoilers. So I thought just the shots in general were really well, constructed. So I guess kind of spoilerly, there was this 15-year-old girl who had The Shining, and she would use it to, make older men sleep and steal their shit, and
right?
Put viper marks on their
so that
cheeks.
When their wife saw it, they would be like, oh, it's a daily reminder.
Yeah, and so the cult group, the True Knot, gets her, and the shot when the ceremony when she was about to get initiated into the cult, I thought was really well done. They were on the beach and the fire, and she's got her face to the water, and just stuff like that. And another one that stuck out to me was when Rose, the True Knot leader, was flying.
I was gonna say that
through the air. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it, but.
Yeah, no, that shot definitely
creepy.
stood out.
Yeah.
A lot of the fact of shots that they redid from the original I thought were really well done as well.
Yeah, we can get into some of that in spoiler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can start with spoiler territory now. So yeah, I just thought the cult in general was pretty
interesting,
terrifying the way they portrayed it. The first time we see them is the very beginning of the movie when it takes place in 1980, and this little girl gets runs off into the woods.
Yeah, and then she meets up with the leader of the cult.
Yeah, Rose, who's played by Rebecca Ferguson, which was in Mission Impossible. She was awesome in it.
Yeah, she was really good.
She was a good villain.
She had a top hat Slash, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was badass.
But yeah, she entices this girl to stay, and then all of these people just start showing up, a couple at a time, and it's just and she's oh, it's just my friends, and it's and they all just start. She grabs her arm, and then they all start slowly walking towards her. It's oh god. And
if you've seen Gerald's Game, the Moonlight Man, that tall-looking dude, he was in this movie as well.
Yeah, he was the decrepit fuck.
The old decrepit cult guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also in Twin Peaks as well. He's 7 feet tall or something. It's
really
crazy. Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so we see that the cult is basically taking kids. From the jump, and then we kind of see what Danny went through at the Overlook, like in the Shining. Like they redid some shots there.
Mm-hmm. And it does like the aftermath of like what happened after like all of those events as well.
Yeah, and when they did like redo shots of The Shining, like obviously it was different, you know, cast people. Like the Danny Kaye was different. Yeah, I thought the mother.
Yeah, what's her name?
I forget her name.
Wendy?
Fuck. Is it Wendy?
Yeah, I think it is Wendy. I'm trying to think of
the actress who played Wendy. I thought was really good. Mm-hmm. I like being Shelley Duvall. Like
yeah, Shelley Duvall. That's who I was thinking of.
And so it shows Danny like riding through the halls of the Overlook, and he goes past 237. And in the original, when 237 opens up, it's like bright in there.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, it was dark, and like at like the last second, you see like the old woman like start to like creep out, which I thought was a really cool shot.
I also like the sound design as well, because like in the original, like when he was like going around on those shots where it was just following him, you would just hear like the wood and like all the stuff that he was like going on, and it was just like that in this movie too, which was cool.
And obviously when he's going around the halls, it's the same like tracking shot.
Yeah, I say it's just falling behind him.
From The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that Danny is basically, even as a kid, is like haunted by the creatures of the Overlook.
Right.
So, I mean, he'll be sleeping at night and he'll look in his bathroom, and like the old woman will be in there,
and
she'll open the curtain, and so he's obviously terrified. And then, what was the chef's name? David?
I'm trying to think. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I think it.
He basically teaches Danny to
basically like lock the monsters up in his mind, pretty much.
And
I'm trying to find his name, but he was pretty well cast too.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same guy from the original.
Was it?
I thought it was
Dick.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it the same guy?
It seemed like it was. I mean, maybe it wasn't, but I guess he was pretty old in the original, so maybe yeah.
I mean, they might have like done the the make you look younger thing.
Oh,
which
true.
Is pretty. No, it wasn't. It wasn't him. It was a different guy.
Okay.
His name was Dick.
Right. But yeah, he was like kind of Danny's apparition.
Mentor pretty much. And yeah, and so we see that kind of theme of like mentoring someone obviously carry over into the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he basically teaches Danny how to like lock the monsters up, and then eventually Danny goes into the bathroom, which was a great shot.
Yeah.
He walks in the bathroom and she's in there, the old woman, and she like stands up. And because the bathroom is like so small, it's just like a really creepy, just like image.
And he just like closes the door behind him. Yeah.
And so he, pretty much figures out how to deal with these shining ghosts.
Yeah.
And then so it flash forwards to like 2011, I think.
Yeah.
And Danny is like a full-blown like alcoholic, like piece of shit, pretty much.
And he's played by Ewan McGregor from the Star Wars
Obi-Wan,
prequels.
Of course. And yeah, we see him like stealing money from like a one-night stand or something. And then Dick would come in and be like, "Hey, Danny, like, what the fuck you doing?"
He was basically like his conscience.
Yeah,
or his conscience.
And so eventually he like moves to another town. He meets his friend Billy, and he goes to like an AA thing.
Right.
And then he starts working. I guess when he was I think it was when the guy at the AA meeting lost his watch.
Yeah.
And Danny found it, and then he like met with him.
Danny basically was like, "Oh, this is exactly where it is," because he obviously has the ability to shine.
And so Danny like met with him, and it was the same exact shot from The Shining, the original, where Jack is getting the interview for the position.
Yeah, and there was a lot of things that Kevin and I both talked about, where it was like a lot of shots from the original that like you really wouldn't pick up on unless you were like very carefully paying attention.
Yeah, no, there's like a lot of cool stuff,
and that was one of them I remember as well when I saw it, and I was like, "Oh wow, like that seems very parallel." Yeah,
definitely need to see The Shining before seeing this.
Yes,
sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so, he basically starts working at like a hospice center, right?
Yeah.
And that's where he gets the nickname Dr. Sleep, because this cat will go to somebody's like bedside when they're about to die.
Right.
And so this kind of goes on the theme of like the being afraid to die of the movie, which I kind of picked up on. But I mean, so the old people that are like they're about to die and they're like, I'm afraid,
yeah,
whatnot. And then he kind of just like calms them and they like reminisce on like something joyful from their life and then they die.
Yeah, he like uses his ability to shine to like put thoughts in their mind.
I didn't catch that. I guess he did do that.
Yeah, because he wasn't talking. You would just see him like kind of like looking at him, and he was he was still dialogue. So it was like he'd be like, oh, because obviously since he has the ability to shine, he knows about their lives. So he was like kind of regaling them with like happy moments in their life.
Yeah,
he's like, oh, this is like. You remember being down at the docks with like your friends Tony and like how great it was and like stuff like that.
Or the one guy was like, "Do you smell the blueberries?" And
he's like, "Yeah,
I can taste them or whatever." But I mean, the contrast between him being Dr. Sleep, where like comforting people who are dying, and then this cult group whose main goal is to be immortal, pretty much,
and to just keep consuming power to keep themselves alive.
Yeah. But exactly. So that's kind of where the theme of, being afraid to die, because I'm assuming that's what the cult's driven by.
Right.
Not wanting to die.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
So, I mean, alcoholism is another big theme in it as well, obviously.
Right. Because if you've seen the original Shining, as you know, Danny's dad, Jack, was a huge alcoholic, and that was like a big part of the original was the fact that he was an alcoholic, and he like pretty sure like broke Danny's arm or something.
Well, they didn't even go into that in the original, I don't think, but in the book, yeah, before they left, he like broke Danny's arm.
Yeah,
and that's when he stopped drinking.
Right.
So then he's pretty much just working there for like 8 years to like 2019, right?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he's like messaging with someone on a chalkboard.
Right. And it's just like little cryptic messages, just like hello.
Yeah.
Be like morning, stuff like that, like nothing crazy.
And we're also introduced to like this little girl who is having like a birthday party or something. And a magician is like doing magic tricks and she's like, oh, I can do that too. And like she like is doing all this stuff. Like, so she obviously has the shining.
And she for some reason has a way stronger ability to shine. We should definitely add is because like Danny can shine and he definitely has the ability, but for some reason this little girl, because she's young and pure and not tainted by anything, her ability to shine is way stronger. Whereas Danny, he's an alcoholic or recovering alcoholic.
Well, he Danny like repressed it,
right?
And that's when they finally meet, the girl and Danny. He pretty much initially tells her to repress the shining and don't let the cult group find them. And the reason why the cult group was onto her was, so basically flash forward to 2019 and the cult group is like starving.
Right.
They're like running out of shining to live off of, and just, I mean, they need, people that shine to keep feeding them, which in general is a really creepy way they took it. From like The Shining, it's just have like a cult group that like feeds off them.
Yeah, it's basically like cannibals.
And I like how they're kept like supernatural.
Yeah,
because when the 15-year-old is converted, she's like, I felt like I died, and she was like, am I human? And Rose was like, does it matter?
Yeah.
So they kept it ambiguous whether
they're human or not.
You're like, oh, they're not. Right. They're not human.
Right.
And so they're starving, and they abduct this young boy, Bradley, who's like a baseball guy. And the way they get the most shining out of people is by like torturing them to death, pretty much.
Yeah, basically.
When they scream from being tortured, shining comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And it was really creepy how whenever the kid would scream, they'd all like
swarm around him.
Swarm around and just like suck the shining.
I know.
It's like super creepy.
Yeah. But yes.
And so, I mean, that was probably the most intense scene when
definitely
the kid was getting tortured. I mean, that was pretty.
And the thing that makes it even more intense is that the little girl like is, I think she finds a missing, or no, it was how did she even find him? I'm trying to remember.
I think she just like felt it. Well, when he was getting tortured, she
could like feel his pain.
Yeah, she could feel his pain, and so she like messages Danny on the chalkboard and said the baseball boy like is being tortured, he's being killed, and whatnot.
And she like sees like all of the shit happening to him.
And Rose notices that the girl is watching, and she notices that the girl is really powerful.
Yeah, because they're like super far away from where she,
Yeah, because they were like on the West Coast and the girl was on the East Coast. And the Rose is like, oh shit, we need
this source.
We haven't felt
power.
that. Yeah, we haven't felt that kind of shining, and ever.
Yeah.
And so, was it? Did they meet before Rose tried to track her down?
I honestly can't remember.
I think it wasn't before. So eventually, the girl. Let me see if I can find her name.
Yeah.
Abra.
Abra,
right.
Yeah.
Abra finally meets Danny in this town, and she's like, "Hey, I'm the one you're talking to. This cult group is killing people.
And she's like,
we
I
need to stop
it.
them. If you go to where the baseball boy was, like I'll lead you to them, to where he is." And Danny's pretty much like, "No, you need to like not show your shining. You need to like stay undercover so they don't find you." And so then, like this super creepy scene, which we kind of touched on, where Rose goes into like some sort of astral mode, where she's just like floating over the earth, and like the sound is just like the score is really silent.
Yeah.
Just like
and it's
tracking
it's just
down.
her floating, and then the earth is like right here up and down, and it's just her just flying and just like going like infinitely.
And so eventually she finds the house, and
she like lands on the street that she lives on.
Yeah, and she finds it, and I guess someone's mind is like portrayed as like a filing cabinet in this. So she was starting to go through the filing cabinet of the little girl. And, like, the little girl, like, woke up and, like, fucking slammed the file cabinet shut. Pretty, like, halfway degloves Rose.
Yeah.
Which is another thing I guess Mike Flanagan likes, degloving.
Yeah, big fan.
From Gerald's Game.
Right.
That was, if you haven't seen that. But, yeah, so then, I mean, she ends up hurting her, like, in the real world from that.
Yeah. And she hurts her, like, really bad. And I think she actually goes into her mind, too.
Yeah, that's right. She goes into her, like, cathedral cabinet or whatever.
Yeah.
And so once she returns and Rose returns and is wounded, she's like, all right, we need to like go fucking get this chick. And from there, I think Dan and Billy go to find the boy's body eventually. And they're talked into it.
And it's cool like how they have Danny and Abra communicating in that sequence, because it's like she's at home, but like because of her ability to shine, she's like in the car and can see everything they're seeing. Yeah. So she's like directing them, and only Danny can see her. And I think that's when we find out that the creatures in The Shining are similar to the cult, where they feed off The Shining as well, which is why they wanted Danny. Which it makes the original even cooler. Yeah, it makes sense. It ties it in. Right. So, I mean, I thought that was a really good tie-in for a sequel to The Shining. Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, so they find the boy's body, and from there they, like, go to Abra's house and, like, talk the father into joining, right? Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure she is trying to figure out where they are with the boy's glove, because they get the glove when they find his body. That's right. So once Abra gets the glove, she can find out where the cult group is, because one of the cult members like put his hand in the glove. Right. And so the dad of Abra at first was very skeptical and was like, "Oh, you're the girl, or you're the guy my child is talking to." And we see that he's somewhat of an alcoholic himself. And a writer as well. And a writer, which you caught on to, which I didn't catch on to. So, yeah, it was a good parallel. To Jack. But yeah, so he was like pouring a drink and like offering it to Billy and Dan, and they were like, nah, like, no. Yeah, because they're recovered alcoholics by this point. Mm-hmm. So then they pretty much hatch a plan where they draw the cult members out in the middle of nowhere, and they see Abra like sitting out there. Right. And, like, the 15-year-old goes up and, like, puts something in her neck, like a syringe. Yeah, like, put her to sleep. Yeah, and
And then you see that like it wasn't really Abra, it was like a teddy bear.
Yeah.
And then Billy and Dan just start like absolutely having at them, just shooting them
with these like deer rifles. I think was what they were. And yeah, they just start taking off like the cult members like one by one, basically.
We should also mention before this, because I forgot about this, so the old fuck in the cult group ends up dying.
Oh yes,
at one point.
Yes, yeah, because he's like God knows how old. Like they say he's been around for like empires and like all this stuff.
Yeah. And so the 15-year-old sees, what it's like for these things to die, what she just became.
Right.
And so it looks like very painful, and he's like kind of phasing in and out. You can see it's not.
It's like his old skeleton and like between his real body and that. It's very
And so they're all like, it's very sentimental moment between the group when he dies.
Yeah.
And so he finally dies, and we see him like, release some shining.
Yeah.
And once he does, the cult group like swarms his ass.
Yeah.
To like get that shining, which I thought was super creepy.
Oh yeah, it dehumanizes them even more because it's like they don't even care about their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the plan when they just start killing like all the cult members.
Yeah, all the ones that are kind of like less important, they kind of just pick off and take, and they kill pretty much all of them.
And the 15-year-old has like telepathic abilities, so she can tell someone to sleep and they'll go to sleep and stuff like that. So she tries to tell Dan to go to sleep, and he like kind of powers it because he has shining as well. And then Billy shoots her.
Yeah.
And right as she's about to die, she says to Billy, "Kill yourself." And then Billy kills himself because she has like telepathic abilities.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty fucking sad. Just how like immediate it was,
Yeah, it was very sudden, and up until this point, Billy is like this great character that like
and he helped Dan out when he needed it the most.
Right, exactly. So you definitely feel like some sentiment when he like dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then it's pretty much Abra gets like the actual Abra gets like abducted.
Yeah. So one of the main cult leaders,
Crow Daddy.
Yeah. He comes to where Abra lives and kills her dad with an axe, I think, and then takes Abra.
Interesting. If it was an axe, that's interesting because he's a writer and alcoholic, and then he was killed by an axe.
True. I don't know if it was an axe. Maybe it wasn't, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
He gets stabbed or something in the chest, and he dies. And then
the mother's away. They like set that up that the mother was away.
Yeah, she was on like some trip or something, and so he takes Abra and doses her with like some really heavy dose of like needles or something.
Yeah, to like suppress the shining.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then Abra's like in the car,
and
she like can't do any shining
because he's just dosed her so heavily. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so and then Dan pretty much like communicates with Abra, right?
Yeah.
And says like, and he like phases himself into the car.
Yeah, he more or less like possesses her body.
Yeah. And he sees that Crow Daddy doesn't have like his seatbelt on. And so I guess when he phases himself in, he could shine.
Yeah, I guess
so. Which is kind of iffy because like if he's in her body, then shouldn't he have her powers at the time?
Right, you would think, yeah.
But anyways, he like swerves the car off the road, hits a tree, and Crow Daddy flies out and dies.
Right.
And then from there, Rose goes absolutely mental because she's back at main camp because she was injured, so she didn't come.
And there was another thing as well, which I don't know if you picked up on this, but there was like some kind of weird, like when people of her own clan or cult died, she like felt it. So like when all those people are dying in the woods, she's like screaming and like, and same with when Crow Daddy died, she's like freaking out.
Yeah. Well, she was like fucking Crow Daddy, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then she basically consumes the rest of the shining that the cult had.
Right, to try to make herself like as powerful as she can be.
Yeah, and like her hand heals, and we see she's coming. So Dan decides the only way to beat her is to go back to the Overlook and use the creatures of the Overlook to kill her as well.
Right.
And so that's when, I mean, same exact shot throughout the movie too, which we like any car moving or whatever, it was always a top-down shot, like The Shining.
Oh, true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like even before they went to The Shining, it was always top-down, like similar to The Shining. And then once they returned, it was like at night and wintry, and it was the same shot through the trees.
Which again is a cool parallel because in the original, it's bright and sunny out, which I didn't even think about.
Yeah,
and it's awesome because they use the same score from the original.
Yeah, it was like intro. It was a little different though, which I thought was cool.
And the other cool, like the entire last hour of the movie was basically just like remembering the original Shining, which I thought was really cool.
I think they did a good job of paying homage to it without like copying it.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, so we see they go back to the hotel, and Danny's like, "You stay in the car. You'll see her coming up the mountain."
And he's like, "Just honk the horn if she's like on her way,
or let me know." So then we see Danny like go in and like wake the place up, pretty much.
Which I think more or less delves into him going to the bar, which Jack went to in the original Shining, where he's sitting at the bar. You know, obviously the hotel's completely empty, but he's seeing all of these. You know, he's seeing a bartender that's serving him a drink. He's drinking like whiskey. But in this one, it's Danny sitting at the bar, and Jack Torrance is the bartender rather than some random guy that worked at the hotel.
Yeah, and it wasn't Jack Nicholson, but because at first from the side it really didn't look like him.
Yeah.
And then we see him. He like wants to give Danny a drink like really bad, and when Danny refuses, he like throws the drink, and like that was a very tense moment, which I mean goes on the alcoholism and like the father and son theme and like not being what your father was, I guess. But,
yeah, and like I was saying, and like we were talking about, I love the line when he's like at the bar and he's like, and I think Danny says, "A man takes a drink, it's like something like about a drink.
A drink takes the man," or like something like that.
Yeah, it's like a drink takes drink and a drink takes the man.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Something cool.
Yeah,
and so Danny kept saying, "You're like my father," but he was like, "No, you're mistaken. I'm Lloyd."
Yeah,
or whatever.
Which I think was the original bartender. Yeah,
exactly. And he was basically saying the alcohol is his medicine. He's like, "Take your medicine, Danny."
Right.
And then it at the very last part of the scene, it zooms out and you see a front face of Jack.
Yeah.
And I mean, it did resemble him.
Yeah,
so it was.
Yeah, no. I thought all the people that were supposed to be lookalikes were really good.
Yeah. Because I was like, are they going to have Jack in this?
Right. I was wondering that too.
Because I was like, I feel like they need to.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it. And I'm glad they did do it. And he wasn't in it that much. So
it was just like that. Yeah.
You did see a little shot of him walking down the hallways with an axe.
Right. But it was just like a back shot. So it wasn't like anything too crazy.
And so Rose finally comes to the hotel and they like have a plan. They go in the room where Jack would do all his writing.
With the big stairs in it.
And so then they take a Rose into Danny's mind out in the maze.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool because they basically recreated the whole end scene from the original Shining with the giant maze and her. It's just this Rose character falling around Abra through this maze.
Yeah,
and and then I think she finds her after because
she catches on to the fact that she's not in Abra's mind, and we see that one of the boxes that Danny puts monsters away in is like coming up behind her to like, get Rose,
right?
And she like broke out of it, and so she comes out and she realizes Danny has Shining too. She's like, "Oh, where have you been? We didn't catch up on you,
right?"
And so this is where like a similar shot of like Jack coming up the steps with the axe. It was like the same shot of
Shelley Duvall just like
backing up.
Was it him coming up with the axe? I thought Shelley Duvall had the axe and she was like swinging it.
She had it at first, but then he ends up getting it.
Oh, okay.
I think. And maybe I'm wrong with that. But
yeah, in this
I think you're all right. Yeah, so they were just walking up and Shelley had the axe.
Yeah, because in this
Danny had the axe.
Yeah, in this Danny has the axe and Rose is just following him up. So it's kind of like parallels between that.
And every single time Danny swung the axe, it was the same shot from The Shining when Jack's breaking down the door.
Yeah,
where the camera tracks the axe swing, which I thought was really cool.
No, exactly.
Every time they do an axe swing. Yeah, so then she's basically like, "Oh, I want you now because you have Shining as well."
Right.
And so Danny pretty much releases all the overlooked creatures in his mind, and they end up killing Rose.
Right.
And so they like put their hands in her face and stuff. It was really creepy.
Yeah, it's like they like go through her skin and stuff. Yeah, it was very
And then once
effects.
they kill her, obviously they go for Danny.
Right.
Like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he first goes in the hotel, he starts the boiler.
Yes. And he also, we should say, when he's like looking at the overlook in general, he finds like the door that like Jack like had hit with the axe to try to get to Shelly. Yeah. But yeah, and then he tells Abra to leave, and she sticks around and finds him, and he's like chasing her because he's basically possessed by...
That's right. Yeah, so he gets possessed somewhat by the hotel then.
Right.
So then he starts going after Abra.
Yeah.
And Abra like can get it out of him for like a second, and he tells her, this is where I belong. Like,
yeah,
this is where
like he needs to end
my journey ends or whatever.
Right.
And so he tells Abra to get the fuck out, and so Abra basically leaves, and Danny like goes back to the boiler room, which is like starting to get engulfed in flames, which if you didn't know, that's how the original Shining ended.
Really?
In the book.
Oh, okay.
So I thought it was because I remember Stephen King being mad that
they didn't end it the same way.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So I thought, I don't know how Dr. Sleep ends.
Right.
But I thought this was a way of him, appeasing Stephen King and the original end of the show.
Right.
So the hotel pretty much gets engulfed in flames and Danny dies.
We should also say when he's just sitting there waiting, it's like his mom is like there with him, and then it's like Danny as a kid, and they're both just kind of like embracing each other as like the hotel blows up.
And we should also mention too, when Wendy was dying initially, Danny said he would see flies when people were about to die.
Yeah.
And when his mom was dying, her entire face was covered in flies, so he like really couldn't be there to like comfort her when she was dying, which is also interesting to think because he didn't comfort her then, but then he gets the job as hospice.
Right.
And he does start comforting people.
That's true. Yeah.
And then at the end, he, embraces with her.
Right.
In like the last moment, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And so Abra gets like picked up by the cops pretty much. And so we see Dan is basically a spirit now to Abra, and it's similar to what Dick, that chef, was to him.
Right.
And so he basically starts being a mentor to her.
Right.
And he tells her, don't hide your shining. And like...
Right. And I know another thing they were saying as well was like, she was asking like, oh, is there other people like us out there? And he's like, oh yeah, like it's bound to, you know, even in just small amounts.
And so he pretty much tells her, which contradicts what he initially told her, to hide your shining and not let people... He basically said, show your shining, be open about it and whatever.
Yeah.
And so when her mom, which is obviously grieving the loss of her husband, it's like, who are you talking to? She's like, nobody. And she's like, well, it was actually, Dan. And then the last shot of the movie, we see the Overlook ghost, the creepy old woman in Abra's bathtub.
And then she like
it's
goes.
The same shot of her walking in,
closing the door.
And the old woman stands up and she closes the door. So, I mean, that was pretty much, that was like the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish.
I would give it a 10 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah, no,
I didn't go in with very high hopes because I was like, sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep. I haven't really heard all that much about the book.
Yeah, I went into it pretty like unfamiliar with like the whole sequel and everything.
Yeah, no,
I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm just trying to see. Yeah, so I mean, I guess mentoring and that kind of thing was. Like another theme of it, I guess, was it was being passed down, like passing down stuff to your kids,
right?
Your people you mentor and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I would definitely say it's a theme.
But yeah, I mean, Flanagan, he went to Towson.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great fucking director.
Yeah.
I saw he's not doing the Hill House season 2, which is a little upsetting.
Yeah, it's strange. You would think they would give it back to him, but
maybe he just doesn't want to do it. I mean, he is doing another movie. If I can find here real quick. I know we're running short on time.
Oh no, it's all good.
plot of it did seem pretty interesting. Oh, it's a TV series, 7 episodes, called Midnight Mass.
Oh, okay.
An isolated island community experiences miraculous events and frightening omens after the arrival of a charismatic, mysterious young priest. That's the next thing he's doing.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, I think we both really enjoyed it. Recommend go seeing it.
Indeed, highly.
And yeah, let us know if you like the reviews, and check out My Wife Left Me podcast if you enjoy this kind of discussion for other goofy stuff, I guess.
Goofs and gaffs.
Goofy news, stuff like that. And yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Peace.